You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 184 of the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I am the host of this, well, these days, Tokidoki podcast. That's right, guys, a Just Japan podcast that is not always coming to you each and every week, like the tagline says. So yeah, we're back with number 184 of the podcast. I'm really happy to be back with you guys. So I'm coming to you guys from Beijing, China. Of course, I am the Canadian who lived in Japan for a long time. Started the Just Japan podcast, and each and every week it's a different topic about something Japan related. And this week, of course, another topic. We're going to be talking about negativity in Japan. We're going to be talking more specifically about foreigners, expats who live in Japan and have a real negative attitude. If you are going to be living in Japan, moving to Japan, if you already live there, these are people you have encountered or you will encounter. And this isn't a Debbie Downer episode, folks. Myself and my friend, Mully, Jim Mullins, we're going to be chatting about the concept of negative foreigners in Japan. But again, it's not going to be just kind of a crab fest where we complain a lot and this and that or talk about complainers. We are going to be also talking about positive people, positive things, inspiring things, and inspiring people as well. But hey, it's a topic that it's an interesting one. I mean, when you go to a Gaijin bar in Japan, you're going to meet that negative foreigner. And ironically enough, this is my third Asian country now. Right now, I'm living in Beijing, China, but 5 years in Korea, 10 years almost in Japan. Everywhere you go, you're going to meet negative foreigners. And I think what we want to do with this episode, or what I really wanted to do, was make sure that you don't fall into the trap of negativity. I myself tend to avoid people who are negative in general in life, no matter where I am. I'm living in Canada, in Japan, in China. Negative people, who wants people bringing you down, right? So I think, again, it's a fun episode this week. You're going to enjoy it. I actually recorded this about 2 weeks ago, and I apologize for it coming out late. So a lot of you folks out there who are regular listeners to the Just Japan podcast are going to be saying, hey, what the heck, Kevin? Where have you been? We haven't heard anything from you in quite some time. Well, I've been focusing a lot on professional development and work. So I've been working, guys, and not really in the kind of sense that you might think. It's not a matter of I'm just at school all the time, but I'm doing a lot of work. Of course, I'm planning ahead. You know, life is like a chess game sometimes if you want to be successful, and I'm looking 5, 6, 7 steps ahead in life. And, we're thinking about life post-China. Where will we be? Where will we go? And I'm lining up all the ducks, so to speak, for a post-China life. Will we be back in Japan? Will we be in Europe? Will we be in Canada? There's a lot of interesting options that have been appearing. And, for those out there, again, who've been following me for some time, many people were very shocked when I did announce that I was leaving Japan with my family. A lot of people are like, what the heck's going on? Why would you do that, Kevin? Japan's awesome. And Japan is absolutely awesome. I make a podcast about it, guys. I've got t-shirts about it, Japan is awesome. But it can be more awesome when you're making more money and you're successful. And leaving Japan at the time of life where I was at, career-wise, was definitely the best move. And my family and I decided to leave, essentially for my career, to fast-track my career and just to climb that ladder of education, professional education. And that's something that we've done, and it's been working out great. So One thing I always want to mention is that I absolutely love the school I work at right now in China. It is a fantastic place to grow as a professional. Now, of course, there are some other issues with China in itself. I don't have a problem. I have a problem with the environment. Okay, so because of the environment, the air pollution and different things like that, and being a father with 2 young children, I've got to put them first, right? You got to think about your kids. So, again, we've been working hard on planning that life after China bit. So that's where I've been, and that's why there hasn't been a podcast in weeks. So bear with me, guys. It's probably going to be a little bit sporadic, a little bit intermittent with the podcast, just because of that reason. Got to focus on other things. But you understand. You guys are awesome. I'm still on Twitter a bit, not as much as I normally would be, and of course you can find me on Twitter at JLandKev. That's the Japan type feed. And if you're interested in my teaching professional stuff, go over at Mad for Maple. And then, of course, the Facebook page, facebook.com/justjapanstuff. And when new episodes come out, go to justjapanstuff.com and all that stuff. All right. So, folks, awesome people who've been waiting patiently for a long time for another episode of the Just Japan podcast, sit back, grab yourself a drink, cold or warm, whatever it may be. Don't know what time of day it is where you are, where you're listening, or when you're listening to this. But wherever it is, I hope it's comfortable outside. I hope it's not too rainy. I hope it's not too snowy. I hope it's not too hot. And let's get ready to listen to my buddy, my friend, Mully, a guy who's been on this podcast many times before, and myself talking about negative foreigners in Japan. Okay, folks, we're back again. It's another episode of the Just Japan podcast. A podcast that's basically happening now every 2 weeks at the time being. Not out of plan, it just seems to be that way. But we're happy to be back with you guys, and we're happy to be back with Jim Mullins. Jim, Mully!
Yay!
Welcome back for the third time in the history of the Just Japan podcast. Jim is on. Well, maybe more than 3 times, but
yeah,
possibly.
About 15 times, isn't it?
Well, I'd say probably even more than that.
Yeah, probably.
Safe bet. Okay, so, you're here tonight. We're going to be talking about Japan things, but the kind of focus of this episode is not to be just kind of a downer, but I find it's kind of a fascinating topic. So it's something I'm sure we can have some light moments with. But
Sure.
This is an episode we're talking about negative people in Japan and negativity. And I think, I've spent a long time living abroad. I've lived in Korea, Japan, and now China. And everywhere I go, I've definitely met negative foreigners. But before we jump into that too much, in a heartbeat nutshell, who the heck are you, Jim? For the new listeners out there.
I am Mully. That's what people call me. I'm from the United States. I've been living in Japan for 27 years now. Originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I got my own little podcast over at Mully's Place and my YouTube channel, and good friends with Kevin for quite a while.
Yeah. Nice. So this guy's fresh off the boat. He's a newbie in Japan, so that's why we wanted to get him on. His fresh perspective.
Sure.
Only 27 years in. So he's still got the rose-colored glasses on. Everything's fresh and exciting.
Still not sure where the toilet is.
Where is that? What's going on here? Okay, so, negativity in Japan. I mean, obviously, clearly not everyone we meet is a negative person. But,
right.
How it tends to be as you move through life, sometimes those people can be the ones that stand out in our minds the most, or kind of the people we remember the most at the end of the day, possibly.
Right.
It can seem like there are a lot of negative, Gaijin in Japan, and sometimes it almost seems like they're kind of a parody of themselves, or they're kind of like a walking, talking comic strip.
Right.
So, negative foreigners. Just maybe we can start with a few stories. Are there any, in your 27 years in Japan, are there any people that right away when I say that term kind of like really stand out in your mind?
Yeah,
and I'm not looking for names, of course. I'm not looking for names. We're not naming and shaming, but I'm sure you got some fun stories.
Well, and I don't have to delve into YouTube for it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been here so long that I've met so many people since I've been here, and there are quite a few people, Kevin, that are jaded, and I mean, I don't really have any specific stories. I mean, people complaining, oh, racism, and nobody wants to sit next to me on the train, and oh, why do they compliment me when I use chopsticks, and all this and all that, right? I'm like, how can you be offended when somebody gives you a compliment? Um,
Yeah, true.
but yeah, I've kind of thought that a lot of the people that get over here and get a bad attitude,
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling quite a few of them, not all, obviously, and this place isn't perfect. We'll get to that later, but um, I have a feeling a lot of those people are the like otaku type that are
Okay.
really into the manga and anime and the cosplay and the comic cons and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they think they're going to get over here and it's going to be, Comic Con 24/7, right? And then
Mm.
they arrive and realize, oh crap, I got to go to work and this is just regular life like anywhere else. I
Mm.
think the veneer comes off
And when
and
that
they see that living here is really different than living anywhere else.
and that's when the negativity maybe starts to rear its ugly head.
Yeah, they thought it was going to be, they thought it was going to be Hello Kitty and Dragon Balls everywhere they went, and it's not like that. And um, probably some people, and I don't mean this as a jab at anybody, but I have a feeling a lot of the people are probably not very good socially, and they think that coming over here somehow they're going to break out of their shell. But if you don't, you're going to be doing the same thing that you were doing back home.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
really not that different here. I mean, and the way my dad used to say it is, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. And that's kind of the over here in Japan, you put your pants on one leg at a time, just like you do back home. You know.
And there's probably a set of people who are disappointed that they have to put their pants on that same way.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I don't mean that to insult anybody. I mean, obviously, if you had a dream to come over here and it doesn't turn out, it could be crushing. You know.
Hmm. Well, I mean, you definitely have those types. I think there's something to that. I used to find that my life in Japan tended to be, I wake up in the morning, I would make a pot of coffee, and I would have my coffee, and I would have my breakfast, and then I would, go to work, and then I would teach the same way as I would teach anywhere else, and then I come home, and,
Right.
that was my life in Japan.
Uh huh.
There are interesting things to do on the weekends, often, if I
Sure.
want to get out of the house and stuff. But for the most part, now I suppose there's, you got that kind of set of people. Um, you know, from my experience too, and maybe because when I basically my entire time in Japan, I was a married man. But
Uh huh.
before I went to Japan, I spent 5 years in Korea. Was a single guy there, and I spent a lot of time in the equivalent in Korea of Gaijin bars. And in those Gaijin bars where you would go on a weeknight to swill some cheap beer and stuff, you definitely met your fair share of those kind of non-otaku kind of people, foreigners who maybe
Hmm.
teachers and things. And a lot of those guys had some pretty big chips on their shoulders.
Yeah.
And not just guys. I mean, I met my fair share of foreign women who had big chips on their shoulders as well.
Oh, sure. And I really can't speak for women. Obviously, neither of us can.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
I'm sure that the experience for a woman is much different than it is for a guy.
Oh, yeah, I would have to think so. Yes.
Yeah, and especially, and I'm going to give the women a big break here because they deserve it. They really do because I don't think there's a Japanese woman. I don't think I've met a Japanese woman that hasn't been accosted in some way,
Mm.
whether that's touched on the train or flashed from somebody driving by, or you know what I mean.
Well, I know what you
Um,
mean. I mean, my wife and her friends have. I can remember years ago, before we had kids, when we were My wife and I were married and kind of living that kind of, I don't know what the kind of not single life, but married with no kids kind of life, and hanging out with her friends and going to places with her Japanese female friends. I can remember one night them all sharing stories and basically explained to me that
Mhm.
they had all had incidents where they've been groped on a train or groped in a supermarket or groped in a department store or had some peeping toms, spying on them or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll stick with the male perspective. Obviously, let's stick with what we know and what we've
Yeah.
maybe not so much even what we've experienced, but what we've encountered and the kind of people we've met. Now, okay, so I'm gonna jump to a different topic about negativity. And guys, this whole podcast won't be about negativity, and hopefully we'll be able to have some light things in here. But I was right away. I was thinking about when in my time in a place, 10 years in Japan, 5 years in Korea. I met a lot of different types of foreigners in those places, foreign men, and I kind of thought of like the young negative foreigners versus the old air quotes lifers foreigners
Right.
who are really bitter and negative. Because I've definitely met people who've been in Japan for a long time, much longer than I've been, who were really unhappy with being there.
Yeah.
And just constantly complaining about every aspect of life. So, what would you say?
Sure.
Okay, when we think of let's look at these two different groups. You got the young negative foreigners versus the older negative foreigners. I would have to think that maybe the younger ones might kind of more fit into the kind of mold of what you were talking about earlier.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Having their dreams, their dreams of Hello Kitty and Dragon Balls being crushed.
or even or at the end of the day, I mean, like think about we got to know each other via YouTube, right? So
Right.
I mean, I was making videos in Japan before that cute term J vlogger was floating around.
Right.
We were just vloggers in Japan,
Right.
video bloggers in Japan, maybe even, and a lot of people would contact me early in the days when there weren't very many YouTubers in Japan, and people like Busan Kevin were big, air quotes big, and said,
Right.
I watch your videos about Japan. I love your videos. You're the reason why I want to come to Japan, or your videos are the reason why I want to come to Japan.
Right.
Fast forward 10 years or more,
Mm.
and there's some pretty slick video vloggers out there, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
There's a lot of really high quality videos coming out of Japan that are done by vloggers that look very professional and pretty amazing, right?
Right.
Would you think that maybe, although that maybe some people get, there's that allure and attraction to Japan because of the manga and the anime and the Hello Kitty and the Lolita fashions and stuff, but also maybe
Sure.
there's like the kind of slick, amazing looking Japan that is kind of portrayed via YouTube. Do you think that probably sucks some people in?
Oh, sure, for sure. And what's the guy's name? What's that guy's name? He's doing really well for himself. Give me one of the Japanese, the American, he's I think he's British.
Oh, I know you mean abroad in Japan.
Yeah, abroad in Japan.
Yeah. Chris Broad, I think his name is.
Yeah, yeah. So he showed up, and just out of nowhere, his channel took off and going really, really well. Right?
Yeah, he's clearly making a living doing this. He's a professional now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing really well, and good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think there are a lot of people that think that they're going to get on YouTube and just take off like that. Right? They're going to come here and start a channel, and they're going to be a big J vlogger, and then they get over here and nobody watches them. Right? And not everybody's going to be a big J vlogger. I've relegated myself to the fact that I'm pretty much at my limit. I mean, my subs will go up a little bit here and there, but I'm never going to be 100,000 or 500,000 vlogger.
Oh, me too.
It's
man.
just not. I don't have that kind of channel.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, you look at my channel and you're like, wow, Kevin's got like over 24,000 subscribers, but like I put up a video and I just get a few hundred views.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, that would be a few thousand views. But I mean, what happened? Right. The difference was that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I started making YouTube videos in Japan, there was very few people doing it. So
right.
There just weren't many in the pool. Whereas now there's so many, and with all that. But
now everybody's got a phone, and everybody's making videos, and everybody's putting them up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think what's the latest statistics? Like there's more than 120 hours of video put up every 60 seconds.
I believe it.
On YouTube worldwide.
And
Like, so
I think a big difference too.
as soon as you put a video up, it's disappeared into the abyss.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think there a big difference between people kind of like of our generation of YouTubers. When I say our generation, or even me, like I was
Mm.
doing it before you. I mean, I was doing it
Sure.
I was doing it pre-monetization. You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
no one was making money, and we weren't. I don't think there were very many people, or I mean, it certainly wasn't ever crossing my mind or other vloggers I knew. We weren't doing it to be famous. We were doing it because
Yeah. Yeah.
it was just this kind of fun, new, cool way to kind of express yourself and
Yeah.
show family
Actually,
and friends like back home what you were doing.
right.
Um,
Yeah. I had no intentions whatsoever of being on YouTube. None.
well,
Um,
and then you get convinced to put your first video on, and your first video goes viral.
exactly. Yeah. And not just viral, but I won the Video of the Year award
Yeah,
for that
you
video.
actually won a YouTube award for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that video, and for anybody that's thinking that I'm, tooting my horn about this, that video was just something that I wanted to show my mom.
Yeah.
That's all it was. I uploaded it and it took off. I have no idea why it did, but it did, and I got the Video of the Year for it. So, and I never kidded myself that was ever going to happen again. And Kevin, I honestly had zero intentions of ever being a YouTuber. That happened, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm going to have to make videos now. So I just started, I didn't even know what to talk about. My early videos, you'll see me sitting here in my room going, hey, YouTube, this is Warm with Strat, looking like an idiot, So,
Well, I think
but
I think like
I'm about 7,300 subscribers now,
Mhm.
but it's taken me what 7 years to get here.
Yeah.
So and I think I'm pretty much topped out. I mean, I'll probably hit 8,000, but that's probably a year from now. I mean, it's not anything that's gonna.
Well, I think what we're kind of getting at for those of you guys that are listening is that we became YouTubers for whatever reasons, but it was clearly not to become famous. And
No,
we're both realistic with where our channels are and what we do. But I think there's a demographic of people who want to come to Japan to be teachers or something, but they're seeing that as a way to get there to become famous YouTubers. And
right. Yeah.
that's not really a reality. And I think there's a lot of people who are coming with that attitude who are going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I mean, and of course, there's people. I mean, there's other. I mean, I guess we can think of a million other reasons why people become negative. Obviously, because of their jobs, their work, right?
Sure.
People who come to Japan and they work for like an Eikaiwa language school, and maybe they get ripped off, or they're treated poorly, or they're like, this job sucks. I don't like this.
Yeah. I think the whole thing coming over here to teach English could be, yeah. I mean, I can see where that would grind on people because, again, when you come over here, and this is another thing that I think about the younger people, especially, a lot of the people are coming over here basically to experience Japan, and they don't realize that they're going to have to work an 8 or 10 hour day, just as if they were back home. You still got to pay bills when you're here, right?
Yeah.
So you're expected to work 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And your days off may be a Wednesday and a Thursday.
If you're working at a language school, yeah.
Yeah, and you got nothing to do on those 2 days, right?
Yeah.
And if you blow all your money, you're not going to be able to do anything.
There's another thing too. Yeah, you get a lot of people who just especially young, maybe fresh out of university, and it's their first time away from home. They're on the other side of the world. I mean, they're sometimes they're kind of like or they're just like in some cases like a mini celebrity because of the fact that they simply are not Japanese.
Right.
So they spend a lot of money out partying and stuff. So when it comes time to go on or they have a vacation or so that they don't have any money to travel. They don't have any money to do anything.
Right.
Just because they're not managing that money wisely.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's simple. That's simple to do too. So we should be very clear that we're not blaming anybody on any. We're not accusing. We're not trying to make the younger people look bad because we went through it. I went through it. When I came over here. I was 23 years old when I got here.
Yeah.
Didn't speak a word of the language whatsoever. And I got my first job, and I was like, oh my God, I went from making, like a couple $100 a week at a gas station to, almost $1,000 a week teaching English.
Yeah.
And like now I've got all this money, and I was like, yeah, time to buy stuff and go drinking and partying. By the end, and you get paid monthly. That's the part that really sucks, because it's one thing if you have to make it stretch a week, but man, you got to make that stuff stretch an entire month.
And if you've never been, like, if you've gone, like, and I was like you, I mean, I was a couple of years older when I first landed in Asia. I landed in Korea, and I was like about 25. But I mean, I got there, I mean, I was working at a job, making okay money in Canada, but, paid weekly, paid every Friday. Every Friday was payday. And then I get there, and it's like once a month. And, and I was just, like, oh, wow, I don't have to pay rent in my apartment. At least my contract, that was the way it was. And, it's like, wow, I'm on an adventure. And I just started like blowing my money so quickly, like just drinking and eating out at restaurants. And,
well, yeah, especially Kevin, when they hand you $3,000. Wow, look at all this money I got. And then you go start blowing money. And before you know it, you're broke, and you still got a week before payday.
And I've been there, man.
Oh yeah, more than once.
Long time ago. Well, yeah, more than once in my case too. Now, okay, so there's again a plethora, many reasons why maybe younger people might be kind of negative about their experience in Japan. Now,
sure.
let's talk about that. That you may meet them sometimes, guys, if you sit down at a bar somewhere, an expat bar in a big city, like an old kind of style English pub. Some kind of crotchety old foreigner who may be like
surly old
foreigner who might be kind of like huddled up against a bar, who has been in Japan for 20 or 30 or 40 years, who's just like angry at the world.
Right.
And I've definitely met more than a few of those in my days when I lived in Kobe. So I'm sure, have you ever met anyone like that, Jim?
Oh, sure, of course. Yeah, there used to be a guy I worked with. God rest his soul. He's already passed away.
Okay.
He was a great guy, but he was one of these guys that everybody here is so racist, and like people would compliment him on his Japanese. I mean, he was here for like 37 years when I met him, and his Japanese was perfect, and his ability with kanji was better than most Japanese people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was a big student of kanji, and somebody would compliment him on his kanji, and he'd go through the roof.
Yeah,
well, I've been here 37 years. Yeah, okay, Bob. No, they don't know that. But Bob's a whole separate story.
But I mean, I suppose, I can remember years ago you made a YouTube video about that. Now, I don't know why it sticks out in my mind so much, but you were, I think, at an airport or something, and someone had walked up to you, and although, you speak Japanese, but they spoke to you in English, and like you said, they don't know your story. They don't know anything about you.
Right. Exactly.
And if you're at an airport, you're traveling.
Right.
I mean, most people are going to, most people, if they're a foreigner, a visible foreigner sitting in an airport with a suitcase in Japan, I'm going to say at least 9 times out of 10, probably a lot more, don't speak a lick of Japanese.
Right.
They're probably just passing through. They are just coming over from Cincinnati to spend 2 weeks in Japan, to go from, Tokyo down to Kyoto and back, and then back home again.
Right.
So, it's I've definitely met more than my fair share of young and old foreigners who get really upset about those kind of things.
Right.
And like, I think we both agree on that. The kind of, part of the reason why we're, you're not a negative foreigner in Japan, and I wasn't a negative foreigner in Japan, is because it's like those people don't know anything about us.
Right.
Meet someone for the first or second time. They don't know that.
Yeah. Even now, like if somebody compliments me on my ability with chopsticks, or compliments me on my speaking or whatever, like, I accept the fact that they don't know if I've been here 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years. They have no idea. So I don't really let things like that get under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can remember, I was just thinking, for some reason it popped into my mind. when I first got to Japan back in 2008, and that was probably maybe partway through my first year, and I was working at the small international school, and I can remember meeting some kind of older European man who lived in
Uh-huh.
in my neighborhood, and he'd clearly been in. Now that I look back at it, he'd clearly been in Japan for a long time. Um, was equivalent like a salary man. He wasn't a teacher. He was
Sure.
probably working at a Japanese company.
Uh-huh.
Dressed like a Japanese salary man. And I can remember one night going for a walk and popping by a convenience store, and this guy was standing outside of the convenience store, like having a cigarette and drinking a beer by himself. And he said hello to me, and I said hello, and he's like, "Oh, are you new here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm new to the neighborhood." He's like, "Okay, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I teach at blah 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 school." And he looked at me, he said, "Never heard of it." Kind of rolled his eyes and turned his back to me, and like took a drag from his cigarette. And I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
okay, there we go."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it was just like, okay, so that's how that's gonna be. And I suppose sometimes that's how it is with some people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Some people can be jerks, you know?
Yeah, and I suppose that no matter where you go, right?
Yeah.
That's not a Japan thing. Um,
Nah.
not at all.
That's where
That's a worldwide thing. Now
uh-huh.
I'm curious. Now, you know, I threw something your way, and because I heard this today from a colleague, and
What's that?
now I'm living in China now, and I've been in China for less than a year, but coming close to a year. And
Mm-hmm.
there is a couple. I guess they're the two biggest YouTubers in China, and there's not a lot of YouTubers in China, but these are pretty big guys. There's a guy named Serpent ZA and another guy named Lawai76, and
Uh-huh.
they made like a collab video called a China Day. And I guess apparently, so here in China, when people are just having a really bad day, a day where
Uh-huh.
they just wish they weren't in China, where maybe China itself is kind of wearing down on them, dealing with their Chinese bosses or the traffic or the subway crowds or you know what I mean, like just life here is getting down. They'll just say, you'll be like, "Oh, how are you today?" And they'll just look at you and be like, "I'm having a China day." Okay, fair enough.
Uh,
And you just kind of step off, like back away from that person. They're having a bad day, basically. And today I saw someone, I was like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And they just said, "I'm having a China day." And he kind of like huffed and shook his head. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I know what that means now." Um,
uh,
Now, I don't experience those. And I know when I was in Japan, maybe in my early days, I had a few experiences that may be kind of close to that when I was new to Japan. But have you ever heard anyone in your time in Japan kind of referring to, like, "I'm having a Japan day" or something similar to that?
no, I've never had that. I've
Neither have I. So I
think
was wondering if you'd heard of this kind of thing.
I've never had anything like that, but back in the day when I first came over here, one of the things that I coined was TIJ.
Okay.
This is Japan.
Ah.
So like whenever something really strange would happen, you're sitting there with your jaw open, you're just like, well, this is Japan. I mean, like, because seriously, people, when you come over here, man, you will see things that you're just like, and I can't pinpoint anything exactly at the moment because really wasn't prepared to say this,
Hmm.
but things happen that just leave you scratching your head like,
Oh, yes.
what the hell was that, right? And it's just like, no, Tij, you know.
Well, there used to be a
And
guy. There used to be a guy.
and
Yeah.
Kevin, you'll understand this because you were here for quite a long time.
Hmm.
But so many people outside that have never lived in Japan cannot understand those things. They
Mm.
can't explain it. It doesn't make sense like this. If you've never been here, you'd never understand it. You actually have to live here and experience it to really get a grasp of what it is. And people shake their heads, no, 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 no. But yeah, trust me, right,
Yeah.
Kevin? I mean,
Oh
there's so
gosh,
many
yeah,
things.
man. I can remember there was a guy, like, like a perfect example of that would be like been in Japan for years kind of thing, and just like there was a downtown area in Kobe, Japan, called Sanomiya, and there used to be a park in the middle of Sanomiya, and every once in a while you go there, and there was this guy who'd walk around, probably in his early 60s, who looked
Uh-huh.
exactly like Pikataro, the comedian, the singer,
Okay,
the apple
sure,
pen banana pineapple pen guy, and
right.
he looked just like that, and he dressed like that pretty much. Like he wore
Well,
this crazy suits. He had like the little weird mustache and the weird like jerry curled hair with big glasses, and he would carry around under his arm a large rooster, as in the bird, a live rooster. This guy would just walk around downtown,
and nobody bats an eye.
and he looked like like the oldest, most stereotypical kind of like Yakuza gangster with a
Sure.
giant rooster. And it was just like,
Yeah.
wow, there you go, right? That's
Yeah.
Japan. um,
Yeah, but it's Japan not because he's walking around like that, but because he's walking around like that and nobody's really paying attention up to it.
yeah, no one cares.
Yeah,
So I suppose for me, I always marveled at that. I always really kind of embraced that aspect of Japan, and I suppose that's why people are like, you've been living there for like 10 years. How come you're not bored of making YouTube videos yet? I'm like, well, how could I be? There's always so many cool things that happen.
right,
And then there's just stuff that even like you'll be walking down the road and you just see something go down the road, or something goes by and you're
right,
just like, whoa, 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 and you're trying to pull your phone out and then it's gone, and you're like, I can't believe I just saw that.
right.
What just happened to me? Oh my God, yeah, Japan.
Yeah, what in the hell was that?
Um,
Well, this is kind of a little different from what we're talking about, but this
Go for
is
it.
um I'm currently, and you're gonna laugh at this one, Kevin. I'm currently in the process of having some root canals done.
Well, I'm not gonna laugh at
Um,
that, but that's not
no,
fun.
no, but
No one wants
no,
to
no,
laugh at
but
it. Okay, yeah.
not that, but the fact that I've had two root canals on the back two teeth on the top right. And Kevin, I've been going to the dentist at least 6 weeks now,
Oh, okay,
every
yes.
week, 6 weeks, and I'm still not finished.
Yeah, you were talking about this on the Mully's Place podcast with Dave in your last episode.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so there we go.
So,
There's a perfect example of something that would probably frustrate anyone, even a happy-go-lucky foreigner.
right.
So
Yeah.
how do those dentists, in a nutshell, work differently than, say, in America?
Well, the whole reason for this is because of the national healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could sit here and complain about it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not going to change anything. And the fact of the matter is, I've been going for 6 weeks to have these teeth done, and what they do the first time, they check them. The second time, they start drilling into them and doing the root canal. And then they went and they did the second root canal. And the next week I go back and they just unplug it. Oh, they plug it and send you home. And
Okay.
then you come back the next week and they unplug it and put medicine in there, check it out, blah, 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 and then plug it back in, send you home. Then you come back again, same thing. They just check it, clean it up, plug it, send you home. The reason for all these visits is because of national health care. The doctors get paid by the number of visits that you make. Now,
Mm.
and we have to also point out that doctors in Japan don't make obscene amounts of money like they do, say, back in the States. Now, they probably get paid well, but they're not like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
they're not making Googles of cash, right?
Yeah.
Now, with that said, so far, Kevin, I've paid less than $50
There you go.
out of my pocket. Okay. So is it a hassle that I have to go 6 weeks? Yeah, but it's not costing me anything. And when I go in, the day I had the root canal, when they actually did the procedure,
Yeah.
when I left, my bill was $7.43.
So whereas in maybe in America you might be in and out in a couple of trips, but you may be in for several $1,000s, right?
Exactly. So yeah, so far I've paid less than $50. And let me also point out, the amount I pay is really cheap, but the quality of care I get, my dentist is probably the best dentist I've ever had in my life.
Hmm.
I
Nice.
have no complaints, none whatsoever. And if I can just kind of step back a little bit, 2 years ago I was put in the hospital. You remember that?
Yeah.
And I was in there for 2 weeks, and I had around the clock care. I mean, nurses actually coming in the middle of the night, taking temperatures and taking blood and stuff like that. And like I had round the clock perfect care, like top notch care. And Kevin, that whole 2 week stay cost me like $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was it.
yeah. No, I mean, I've talked about it in the podcast before. I've written about it on the blog. Like just even me having like hernia repair surgery.
Yeah.
Where actually with the fact that my wife was smart enough to get a small private health insurance policy on top of things, I actually
Sure.
I made a profit.
Yeah.
I actually walked away
Yeah.
from the hospital with like an extra $1,500 in our pocket.
Tomoko, my wife, she had cervical cancer for Christ's sake, and
Mm.
she had to have a radical hysterectomy, and she too was in the hospital for like 2 weeks after that. And at the end of the day, we ended up making like $4,000 off of that.
Crazy, huh?
We came out $4,000 plus from her surgery,
Mm.
the insurance and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So reasons why one shouldn't be negative.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah.
and I mean, obviously we're two people who are not negative people.
Right.
But again, you do encounter those people. And I'm just it's really fascinating to me. Maybe because it's just something that's so alien to me or different. So it's kind of like seeing a car crash. You can't help but rubberneck.
Mm,
Or seeing
right.
something that is seeing a guy who's dressed like a gangster with a rooster under his arm.
Mm.
Um,
Well, Kevin, I've said, about certain people, they would complain if you hung them with a new rope.
yeah.
You
I,
know?
I guess at the end of the day, those are the kind of people who would be negative no matter where they were in the world, right?
Exactly.
If they were back home in America, they would be complaining. And I've met those people, I've met those people and I've seen them transition from Japan back to Canada, from Japan back to Australia, from Japan back to America. And, I follow them on Facebook where when they were here, all they did was complain about Japan. And then when they go back to Canada, all they do is they complain about Canada.
Right.
It's just like,
Yeah.
and then lament how things were better in Japan. And I'm like, wait a second, you were miserable in Japan.
Right.
It's just like scratching my head. Wait, I'm so confused now,
And the only thing that ticks me off about people like that, and there's somebody on YouTube that's notorious for being a Debbie Downer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to name his name but most people are going to know who I'm talking about. He's a big Debbie Downer, complaining about Japan, blah blah blah. And the thing that I hate is he saddles someone like me with oh, you just drink the Kool-Aid.
Mm.
No, I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid. I mean, there's things I complain about here. I know this place isn't perfect. Sure, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, but it's not perfect anywhere you go.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
I mean, I weigh the good and the bad. I'm happier here than I was anywhere else. But I've got complaints just like everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I'm sure no matter where I lived, I'd have complaints. If I were living back home in Canada, I'd be happy, but I'd have complaints. And in
Right.
Japan, I'd be happy, but I'd have different kinds of complaints. It's just
Right.
just I guess some people are more prone to. Well, I mean, I guess we all have different mentalities and different ways of looking at things.
Mm.
But like you said,
Yeah.
some people would be a Debbie Downer anywhere. And I mean, I suppose especially you get people who. It's really interesting. You'll meet some people who are kind of like you mentioned, maybe even. And I've met people, bloggers or people in Twitter, people on YouTube in the comment sections, and video bloggers, people who are kind of notoriously negative.
Right.
No matter if they ever leave a comment anywhere, it's a negative comment or it's a critical comment.
Yeah.
If they leave a comment on a YouTube video or on a blog post, or if they make a video on YouTube, it's just complaining or again, like complaining about people who don't complain, or complaining about those YouTubers who seem to be happy.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they say misery loves company, right? And people that are like that, they can't be happy, and they have to try to bring everybody around them down.
Which is a reason why I pretty much unsubbed to anyone who was ever like that.
Me too.
Don't need that kind of stuff. I mean,
well, I don't watch Japan vloggers anyway.
No, neither do I anymore. I mean,
why would I? Victor's a really good friend of mine. I mean, we talk on the phone almost daily.
Mm-hmm.
But unless one of his videos has a topic that I'm really interested in, I don't really watch him.
Of course.
And I know he doesn't watch my videos. Why would he? He's been here 30 years himself. He's been here the same amount of time I have. Is he going to watch me do a video about vending machines?
Exactly. And I mean, am I going to watch a video about him complaining about some YouTuber I've never heard of nor care about?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm not. Exactly. I'm not, or a drama video about a community that I'm not even involved in. No.
Right.
No time for that. But I mean, totally get you. I mean, like, exactly. I mean,
but let's be clear, because we're using Victor as an example here. It sounds like we're coming down.
No, yeah, exactly. You don't want to do that. No. No, it's the same. No, it's the same. It's
Victor's just an example of.
well, it's the same reason. Like for example, how like you guys who Michaela is, and
Yeah,
Michaela and I get along very well. We have a great rapport. Chat with each other on Facebook and stuff like this. But even she's like I don't watch your videos, Kevin. Why would again? And I'm like, well, I don't watch your
yeah,
videos. I mean, we said that to each other. It's like, why am I going to watch you eating like a video about talking about like eating curry rice, which is something I've eaten a million
yeah,
times? And why am I going to
yeah.
watch a video of you?
Charlotte's a pretty big name over here, and
Mhm.
every time I see her, she gives me a big hug. Mully, but I know she doesn't watch my videos. Why would she?
Mhm.
I don't expect her to, but we get along when we see each other. Rachel and June,
Yeah,
I've met them. I've been around them a couple times.
they've been on the podcast a few
I
times. They're
mean,
great people.
yeah,
But I'm not gonna watch. I'm not gonna watch a
no,
video of like beautiful like cute dresses
no.
you can buy in Shinjuku.
Now Rachel and June, they do a lot. I believe they're doing some travel videos, right?
Well, they
So
are now, and actually June has a really successful channel called June's Kitchen.
his cooking, right?
Yeah,
And I
cooking
have
and
I've
like and a
seen
lot
it.
about knives and like sharpening knives and taking care of knives and stuff.
Oh, I did see him. I did see a knife sharpening video once.
He had one that
But
went mega viral. Yeah.
I know they did some travel type videos,
Hmm.
and if they are going somewhere that I'm interested in going to, I may watch it.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I'm not a traveler, so why would I?
Yeah, yeah. And that's
It's not.
no, I totally am with you. I mean, I think, and that's something too. I think for example, I mean, I think anyone who's been in Japan for a long time would feel that way, or anyone who's been in Korea for a long time probably wouldn't watch Korea vloggers, or anyone who has the
Yeah,
same reasons.
yeah, and also Kevin, let's point to the younger vloggers that are just starting out.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'll subscribe to your channels to support you, but I'm not going to watch your apartment video, your apartment tour. I mean, I can only look at so many Leo Palace apartments, and I'm not going to watch your videos about the vending machines. I use them every day. They're not special to me. They're my daily vending machines for 30 years now. There's nothing and I'm not trying to sound like an elitist, but that's just a fact. I've been here for 27 years, and
27 years of using
vending
vending machines. Yeah.
yeah, a Japanese vending machine is really just every day for me.
Hmm.
What? Oh, look, it talks. Yeah, I know it does. you know, and I
Well,
made that video.
oh, I made those videos too, and I mean,
Yeah,
but I didn't make those videos for you, and I didn't make those
right.
videos for Victor or Charla or Michaela. I made those videos for people who are sitting at home in America or Australia who've never been to Japan, but they really want to go.
I actually made the one I did about vending machines was actually by request. But Michael Marino, he's here. He's actually moved over here, but he was in college at the time,
Hmm.
and he was doing something, I don't remember, it was something he needed a video about the vending machine, so he asked me to make it. So that's what I did.
Hmm.
It was done by request.
Cool. I made a video. My first vending machine video was maybe I was like 2 months in Japan,
Uh huh.
and it was in Kyoto near Kiyomizu-dera, the big Buddhist
Uh huh.
temple, and it was of a beer vending machine that was on a street. And
Yeah.
that basically that video pretty much went at the time viral. In the early days
Oh,
of YouTube,
sure. Sure.
it got like 20 or 30,000 or 50,000 views, which was that was mega viral at the time. That's
Yeah.
pre-monetization, but I
And
mean,
I need and I will openly admit, 27 years ago when I first came over here and I saw a beer vending machine. Are you kidding me? Really, beer? Oh my God! Look at that. There's whiskey in there too.
you don't even need an
What?
ID.
You don't need an ID? What? You can just buy a beer on the street? What? You can drink it on the street? But now it's like, yeah, there's a beer vending machine up near the station. You know?
I'm kind of like that's what skeezy old men drink their beer from.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, yeah. Okay, I'm curious, man. What do you think? In general, what can people do? And I mean, obviously, we're two positive people, but what would you think to those out there who are, wanting to come to Japan, who are now all of a sudden they've listened to us talk about negative people and they're like, oh, what do you think? What can people do to avoid becoming the negative foreigner when they come to Japan?
Okay, well, the one thing that I've always told people is, look, if you're going to come here, and this is where I'm going to get a little sour. Um, when you come over here, you have to be flexible because there are going to be a lot of things happening that you don't agree with. And
Mm-hmm.
I experience these things, even now, I experience things like that all the time. But when I weigh my options of being here or being back in Cincinnati, I'm much happier here,
Mm-hmm.
and if I have to put up with a little, if I have to take a little bit of poop on the nose, that's just the way it is,
Yeah.
because as we said before, no place is perfect.
Yeah.
And do I want to go back to Cincinnati where it's not perfect, or do I want to stay here where it's not perfect? Well, I seem to be happier here. But if you're going to come over here, you need to be flexible, and you need to. It would be nice if you could learn some of the language, just a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
don't expect people to change to suit you. I mean, you're the visitor here. And the old saying, "When in Rome, do as the Romans," actually fits when you come over here. Don't the one thing that I hate, and oh my God, it's Americans that do this the most. The one sentence that I hate, it sends shivers up my spine when I hear it. Well, in America, we do it like this. Well, then go back to America, because that's not how it's done here, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, but don't you think it's effed up? Well, yeah, I do, but that's just the way it's done, and you just kind of have to accept it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No, I completely agree,
yeah,
man.
because they're not going to change.
Yeah. And they're definitely going to not embrace you for talking that way about their culture and their country.
Yeah,
Especially, especially,
exactly.
especially when you meet foreigners who will talk that way to Japanese people, or in a room of Japanese people, who, you know,
Hmm.
if you're working at a language school or something, probably understand every word you're saying, but because they're Japanese, you're going to be very quiet and just listen and take it in.
Right, and and for myself, it's not so much. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker whatsoever. I got plenty of things that I complain about all the time. Um, but at the same time, and sorry, I kind of overdid that a little bit, but because it's kind of go against what I'm about to say. Um, I don't I don't need that negativity in my life.
Mm.
I mean, if you focus on the negative, that affects things around you and things you're doing, and it that bleeds into other parts of your life. And I honestly believe that focusing on the negative turns you into a miserable person.
Oh, I completely agree with you.
And I don't want to be like that. I want to have a good time. I was talking. There was a teacher that I worked with last year. She was, oh God, she gave me a headache every day. Um, she just never could get anything right, and she was the teacher I was teamed with,
Okay.
and it was misery for me, and I was so mad at her every single day. And one day I walked into class, and she had these printouts laying on top of the organ. And when I walked in, I noticed that one of the words was spelled incorrectly.
Okay.
And I was already mad at her for something else. I don't remember what it was. And everybody was mad at her for something. It wasn't just me.
Okay.
Um, well, I walked in, I saw that paper, and I just pointed at it, and I think it needed an A instead of a U, or vice versa, something like that. But I walked in, I saw the word, and I just pointed at it. I put my finger right on top of it, and I said A, and I walked away. Like, I was really rude to her, right?
Mm.
And because and I just kept walking. I didn't even acknowledge. I didn't give her time to acknowledge, look at it or anything. And by the time I got, halfway across the room, I thought, you know what? I thought, that was really rude of me to do that. And I looked back at her, and she was looking at it, and she had a look on her face like she was really hurt, right? And I thought to myself, I don't want to do that to somebody. I don't want to make somebody feel like that.
Mm.
And so I knew that she was catching shit from everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? She was getting mouthfuls every day, people complaining. One of this other teacher, oh my God, he was just horrible with her. Um, and at that moment, I just realized I don't want to be that person. I don't want to make her feel like that. Now we've only got a couple months, and if she makes a mistake or does something wrong, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You, it's not gonna, my job's not gonna crumble because she spelled something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I just decided from that point forward that I was not going to let her incompetence affect me.
Mm.
And from that point forward, whenever I saw her, I put on a big smile. Good morning. Say hi to her. How you doing? Blah blah blah. If I'm in the teacher's room, include her in the conversations with when I'm sitting around at the desk talking to people.
Yeah.
And just help her feel a little more welcome, even if, because like I said, I knew she was catching crap from everybody, and I thought, well, maybe if she's just got one little space here of not being, picked on or yelled at or whatever, maybe a little shining light, right? But she didn't return this school year.
Mm. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, man, like it's people who are angry or miserable, it just kind of it just about one thing, it kind of festers into all aspects of their life, right? So maybe that person,
I let that stuff get to me, and it got me to a point that I was really rude to her, and I'm not rude to people. You know me.
but I mean, it could possibly be, maybe not in your situation, but maybe in other people's situations, where that bleeds over into home life and family life, and maybe
Sure.
they're having that bad day at work because they disagree with this or that, or their hours
Right.
aren't so good, or their shift change, and then they come home and they take it out on their spouse or their kids or
Sure.
their friends, or or they just come home and they just complain about everything. They're just really negative. And who likes to be around people like that? I know I don't.
Oh no, I can't stand it.
Yeah. Stay far away from those people as I can possibly, do it. So for you folks out there, I don't want to keep it much longer, Mully. It's getting late
Sorry,
on your end and my end too. No.
I went way off that one.
I know the folks out there who are true fans of the podcast definitely love hearing our talks. So at the end of the day, guys, I think what you're going to find, no matter where you live in the world, if you're going to be living abroad, Japan, Korea, China, Luxembourg, I don't know. There's always an element of an expat population that is going to be the kind of like the bitter foreigners, the bitter Gaijin, right?
Right.
I just suggest avoiding those people. And find those positive folks that are like you and hang out with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, can I tell a head scratcher story real quick?
Okay, sure.
You're gonna love this one. You may have heard this one before. Tomoko and I got married, and we went down to the city hall to register our marriage, and we filled out all the paperwork, blah blah blah, and we go home. Well, a few weeks later, we received the papers from the official papers that we're officially married, blah blah blah. We get all that stuff in the mail, and we open it up, and I'm a junior. Okay, I'm James Mullins Jr.
Okay,
and Tomoko's name was written Tomoko Mullins Jr. Okay. So
yeah.
So we call down to the city office, and we tell them, we explain to them what a junior is, and they said, well, sorry, you can't change it. And we're like, why can't we change it? Well, it's official. It's already been done. And we're like, no, it doesn't work that way. It was never junior.
That's not her name.
Right. Well, come to find out, and this is something that I never knew. I'd been here, we've been married 13 years, so I'd been here 14 years, 15 years at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew this, but names, Japanese people only have two names, the first and last name. They don't have middle name. That I knew, but I didn't know that on the forms there's only space for two names. So when I'm registered here in Japan, I'm not registered as James Glenn Mullins Jr. I'm registered James Glenn Mullins Jr.
Oh, like two names.
Okay.
James Glenn,
James
one name.
And Glenn
Mullins Jr.
Yeah,
one name.
Mullins Jr. Second name. Okay. So Tomoko comes out to be Mullins Jr. And we're like, no, it doesn't work that way. Blah, blah, blah. You know what their answer was, Kevin?
What was the answer?
we need to come down, get a divorce, then I go to court and change my name to remove the junior, and then we can get married again. Okay? Now there's a perfect example of you go, right? And Tomoko went through the roof. Why should I have a divorce on my record because of your incompetence, blah, blah, blah. And we did some research because we figured this had to have happened in Tokyo before, maybe not so much here in Shizuoka, but it's had to happen somewhere. And we did finally get it sorted out, but it took a while.
That's a Japan moment, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, you know what? On that note, Jim, we're gonna wrap up this week's podcast. Jim, would you be able to tell people where they can find you online and tell them a little bit about your podcast? You guys were back with an episode last week.
Yeah, my friend Dave and we do the Mully's Place podcast at www.mullysplace.com. All links to YouTube, everything, Facebook, Instagram, everything's over there on the homepage. My friend Dave and I do a podcast as often as we can, and it's just life, just guys talking.
Nice.
Yeah,
awesome. So go check that out, guys. Mullysplace.com. There'll be links in the show note at justjapanstuff.com. And thanks so much, Mully.
You are very welcome, Kevin.
Please hang up and try again.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank Jim for taking the time to stop by the podcast yet again. Like he mentioned, you go over to mullysplace.com for all of the awesomeness that is Mully. That was a fun conversation, a fun talk. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. I know a lot of you guys love hearing me and Mully sit back and have a chin wag. You got to do that this week as well. And like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, of course, bear with me, guys. The podcast won't be coming as regularly as they were in the past for just a little while longer, as I basically work on career stuff, work stuff, all of that professional development stuff. And to be honest, one thing I did not mention at the beginning of this episode, one thing that I have been doing a lot of lately that has been taking up my time, but in a very enjoyable and productive way, is I've been writing. That's right, guys. I've been writing again. I've been writing a lot. I don't mean like blogging, that kind of writing. But as for those of you in the know, I am an elementary school teacher. I teach grade 2. And for the majority of my career, I've taught kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2. So I've always been an educator of the youths, of the young youths, the little young youths. And one thing that I decided this year to do was to become more knowledgeable about children's literature. I do know a fair amount about picture books and stuff, and authors of picture books, but what I decided to do was to become more knowledgeable about children's authors who write chapter books. Mysteries and spooky, scary things. And I've been reading a lot of chapter books to my students and, building up their stamina for that, having them be able to sit and focus and listen well. And I've been just really enjoying it. But what I also decided to do this year was to kind of lead by example. And I'm trying to teach my children to write, my students to write, and encourage them to write. So what I've decided to do is to, throw my hat into the mix, into the fray, and do a lot of writing myself. So what I've been working on this year is by the way, guys, you might hear some sound in the background from time to time. There's a fountain not far from me that's like shooting up water into the air and splashing on the ground. So what I've decided to do is write, and I'm writing a series of short stories for children, and they're kind of spooky and scary stories, and it's going to be put into a compilation book. But what I'm doing is I'm using bookcreator.com to publish my little books, and I read them to my students, and I kind of workshop them in class and get the kids' feedback. Well, how was that? What do you think of that? And they're pretty honest, which is great. They're honest, but in a wonderful way. They're not like trolls on Amazon leaving poopy comments or hacking me up on Twitter. It's not like that kind of, not maliciousness, but they're just they're kids, right? So they're honest, and they're just yeah, that wasn't very fun, or that wasn't so scary, or that wasn't. I'm like, okay, fair enough. How can we change this? And they're helping me, so it's great. I'm growing as a children's writer. I'm going to use air quotes on that one, by the way. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that once I get a fair number of these stories together, and by the way, if you follow me on Twitter, you may have seen a few posts, or on LinkedIn or anything like that. It's Tales from Creepy International School. So basically, it's short stories that follow a band of students at Creepy International School and their misadventures and all the creepy things and scary things and kind of funny things that happen to them. So I've been doing that a lot. So I've been writing a lot, doing that kind of thing, sharing with the kids, and I've been really enjoying it. So will this lead somewhere? I don't know, but maybe it will. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, there you go, folks. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, I'm going to ask you guys to take some action. I'm going to ask you guys to head on over to Facebook.com/JustJapanStuff and go like the Just Japan Podcast Facebook page. Go over to JustJapanStuff.com. Go follow me there. And of course, go over to Twitter at JLandKev and follow me there. Just go follow me everywhere, folks. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. I'm always happy to answer your questions if I can. And yeah, that's it, guys. Again, my name's Kevin. I'm a Canadian who currently lives in Beijing, China, but I call Japan home for 10 years. And my wife's Japanese, and my kids are Japanese. They were born there. And, there's always a lot of Japanese happening in our house. We're doing the Japanese thing every day. Yeah, guys, so you guys take care. And just continue being awesome. And remember, wherever you are in the world, hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. And I'll be talking to you real soon.
What?